If you love what you're listening to here, you are going to love our 21-day magical self-care challenge. This is more than just a challenge. It is a community, and it includes our magical self-care course and 2 PDF books, the Magical Self-Care book and the Born Magic book. Both bestsellers on their release date on Amazon, and we can't wait to get them into your hands. Join us for the 21-day magical self-care challenge. And by the end of the class, you are going to have some new magical tools in your tool belt, and you are also going to feel supported, and you're going to have the steps to easily and efficiently bring self-care into your life as the foundation of your life, so you don't have to seek it out every day, because your whole life will be built on magical self-care. Check out the link to join us in the 21-day challenge, and we can't wait to see you in there. When I was in college, I took a class on medieval literature. So I was an English major back in the day, and I actually, this has nothing to do with this podcast episode today, but I changed my major 3 times in, well, I think 3 times in 2 years. And so I took a lot of classes and a lot of different things, but ultimately I was an English major and I minored in women's studies, psychology, both. And one of my most favorite classes was a medieval literature class that I took. Now, this is relevant, I promise. We're talking about runes and sigils today. So I took this medieval literature class, and my professor was this delightful woman who she sewed her own like leather, I don't know what you call them, booties, I guess. Or these like elf sort of looking shoes. I don't know. But she was she was full bodied present for the medieval literature class. And one of the things that we talked about in the class was what came before medieval literature and why medieval lit was the way that it was. And this brought the introduction of the runes and Norse mythology as one of the things amongst many. We talked about so many things, but this was one of the things that we talked about. And in that class, I really fell in love with the Norse myths. I absolutely love them. I love the stories of Odin. I mean, we have a class on it. We teach it once a year. We host it once a year. And it's been underway for like a month or so, more than a month now at the time this comes out. And it is just really one of my favorite things. And then my love for Norse mythology was particularly solidified when I read American Gods by Neil Gaiman somewhere, I don't know, between 2005 and 2009, probably. And I was really like all in on Norse mythology, which then led me to be interested in runes. And that is what we're talking about on today's episode of the podcast. If the word witch makes you feel full of power and excitement, if you love personal development but loathe boring love and light conversation, if a sexy combo of witchery and inner work piques your interest, you're in the right place. Welcome home, Magic Maker, and welcome to Expedition to Soul, the podcast brought to you by the Sisters Enchanted. Welcome back to part of our Thursday podcast series. It's being released all throughout January and February 2024. Don't worry, if you're listening to this in the future and they're already all out, then you can binge them and listen to them at your heart's desire. But we are doing kind of a 101 fundamentals series over these 2 months on Thursdays. And today's episode is about runes and sigils. Now, I just shared with you some of what got me interested in runes and sigils. And when I learned the runes, I absolutely loved, it felt like a code that I was breaking. And I loved diving into them. Now, there are some myths about the runes. We're going to talk about those. But first, let me tell you about runes, and then we'll talk about sigils. And yeah, you're going to leave here today knowing maybe more than you knew before you came to this episode. So the runes are an alphabet. They are an alphabet of the Norse world. So the old Norse people. And we're talking like northern Scandinavia territory. And each rune is now in our modern day and age, not just a symbol, and it's not just a part of the alphabet, but it has a meaning to it. So the runes originate from this ancient Germanic language, right? The symbols were used for writing. And of course, at that time, only the most powerful people could read and write. So not everybody knew how to use the runes. And if you were buried and had runes on your headstone, that meant something about your place in society. Now, a great story that we're not here to go into today, but is the story of how Odin he got the runes, how Odin came to the runes and received the runes. So that's a great Norse myth to dive into. It's important to note that the runes, though, the Elder Futhark runes are they were an alphabet, right? The divinationary meanings attached to them are modern meanings. These are not things that were passed down throughout ages or anything like that. And I think that's a common myth about the runes. The runes themselves are ancient. The meanings we attach to them today, not so much. But when I started learning to read them, though, it did feel like tapping into this ancient well of wisdom because there was just so much to learn about them. So each rune tells a story, but it invokes modern metaphysical associations. So they have these meanings to them. They're used in divination in a way that's somewhat similar to tarot. You can cast the runes, and that simply means taking them and sort of scattering them in front of you, casting them like dice. Lay them out in spreads so you can choose one and put it down in a spread. And then you read the messages that they offer. So when you cast the runes, it's interesting to look at where they clump together, which ones are closest to you. And you can sort of like tea leaf reading, make associations about what's most important right now, what's going to happen later, depending on these runes. The Elder Futhark runes are the sort of most common if you're going to learn about them, but there are other types of divinationary systems that are also called runes, and they've been created by different people with different meanings. In the last episode, we talked about tarot cards and oracle cards and how oracle cards can have all different themes. Runes are similar. People can create casting systems out of any symbols and make their own runes. So they come from this ancient alphabet, but have metaphysical meanings attached to them that are not ancient. And you cast them like you would dice, and you can read them by how they land and put the message together, or you can pull them like you would tarot cards and then read your message that way. But it does feel pretty cool to use them and sort of visualize yourself like connecting with the Norse myth uh, gods and goddesses and being in that magical energy with them. Now, runes are different from sigils. Sigils are symbols that are custom made, and you make them often for a magical purpose. So runes are a set alphabet. Sigils are created by individuals for specific intentions, kind of like personalized magical emblems, if you will. They're each created uniquely for a specific desire or purpose or conscious creation, intention, manifestation. And it's kind of like drawing your wish into reality. What you do to create a sigil, there's a bunch of ways to do it, but a common way to do it is to write down a word or a sentence that relates to the thing you're trying to create or embody. From there, you cross out all of the vowels, and from there, you cross out repeating consonants. So, for example, the word theater, Theatre, in that one, you would end up with a T, an H, and an R left over from your crossing out. And then you would put those together to form a symbol that you create all on your own. And in that way, it's unique to you. So then this sigil, the symbol you created, becomes the focal point for your intention, your manifestation, whatever it is that you are working on magically creating, and this tool for focusing your energy. So it's a very personal process, and it's something that you can sit down and actually make a ritual out of creating your sigils. What's interesting is you could theoretically make lots of sigils and then make those into casting runes and make your own system in that way, right? So runes versus sigils. Runes, they seem very similar, but they are quite different in how they're created and their use. Though, as I said, you could make a bunch of sigils and then create runes out of them. But runes, the traditional runes, if you buy a book about runes or you buy some at a metaphysical shop or something, they are going to follow that ancient Norse alphabet, that ancient Germanic language. They're going to follow that alphabet, and then they're going to have modern metaphysical meanings to them, attached to them. And then sigils are personal. You're putting your mark on the world, you're consciously creating your will, your desire through these sigils. Runes, you will need to learn the meanings and learn to put them together to interpret them. Sigils, not so much, right? They're a tool that you have created. So, whatever one you're drawn to using runes or creating sigils, just like I talked about with the tarot and oracle cards episode, don't get too hung up on the details. That is my top tip for you, not to get too hung up on those fine details, because you can always look up the meanings of the runes and you can use your intuition and your common sense to look and say, oh, all these runes landed really close to me. They must have more to do with me. And these ones were farther away. That's at a later date, not of consequence now. Or the ones that are close together, read them together, right? So in that way, you can use your intuition, use your common sense, and start to interpret the runes based on the meanings, but also how you feel about where they landed. And then with sigils, it's just a beautiful practice to do. You can create sigils and then use, like when you're cleaning your house, you can use your cleaner to create a sigil while you're cleaning for abundance on your countertop or protection on your front door. You can put, I know people who draw sigils in their kids' clothing, like where you'd write their name, but a sigil in their clothing, sigils in your wallet, on your car for protection. Like you can, the beauty is it's a symbol you've created, and then you can draw it with your finger. You can just put it with, like I said, water. You can use anything at all to create it. You can use crystals and kind of draw one, make one on as a grid or as something as a big focal point out of crystals on a sacred space in your home. So many options with sigils. The world really is your oyster. All right. Well, we do teach about runes more in depth in our programs, in the in our Norse myth class, which we teach every winter and fall into winter, and then also in our holistic witchery program too. We teach about runes in there. So if you're interested in learning more, check out our programs and all that we have to offer. But like I said, now you've got a good idea about what they are, the differences between runes and sigils, and an idea on how to make sigils. Oh, I'll leave you with this last tip. When you are buying runes, you can get them in all different kinds of ways. You can make your own really easily with shells and stones. Runes are so easy to make on your own. Little pieces of wood and draw them with a marker or a wood burner if you are crafty like that. But you can buy runes that come on wood or that are etched into crystals. So that's the other piece about runes is you can buy them on materials that mean something to you or speak to you in some way, or make your own and really have fun with the process and deepen your connection to the symbols through making your own. Runes and sigils are great for that. It's a really personal process where I think if any of us sat down to think, oh, I'm going to make my own tarot deck, sure, we could like maybe draw or write something, but I think more of us would be intimidated about drawing a tarot deck than we would finding a set of stones and then writing the runes on them. And it's something that you can do and really have fun with and deepen your connection to the tool by making it your own. All right. Well, there you go. Runes versus sigils for you. We'll continue on next Thursday's episode with another 101 topic. Let's see if I can figure out. Oh, next week we're going to talk about crystals. So be sure to hit subscribe, turn on your notifications so you don't miss any episodes as we continue on this Thursday series of fundamentals of different elements of a witch practice. And I guess that is it. All right. Well, enjoy diving into runes and sigils. Be sure to share with us if you're in our student community. We'd love to see what you conjure up. And until next time, I hope that you have an enchanted rest of your day ahead. If you love the podcast, be sure to leave us a rating or a review. That helps us to get the word out about all we're doing here at the Sisters Enchanted. Thanks for being part of our community, and we'll see you in the next episode.